5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Supporters panel chair people globally today, and especially from those that constitute cultural, linguistic, ethnic, gender, religious minorities all around the world, and no matter what country in which they live, have always lived under a system of continual and uneasing paradigms. They've lived under unfair and unjust assumption that they have to bear concepts such as national pride, patriotism, that these people at no point in time are to speak against the state from where they belong. These people have essentially lived or are living with no alternative. But first things first, how do we define who migrants are? Migrants are people who move from one place to another, especially in order to find work or better living conditions. In a lot of cases, these migrations take place as a forced outcome of the deplorable conditions they are already living in. At other times, they consent to mobilize so to escape a life of constant threat. Secondly, what do we mean by memories? The faculty by which the mind stores and remembers information, and we think that memories that you possess are completely out of control as well. That is to say, your experience in life is with limited ability to control what you will remember later. But it's the things that you do actually remember greatly impact all of your future actions. One of which, under our context, is the consideration of the choice to move and migrate. This is where you're consenting to forfeit a portion of your identity, and which has eventually led to your decision to migrate in the first place. The fact that this debate talks about all memories implies the idea that cultural representation cannot be a big factor in this debate, because several people will have memories that don't correspond to their culture, because certain people don't form strong ideas, affiliations about their culture. A lot of these people are just going to have general ideas about the social issues and other practical harms about the regime's significance, which aren't related with the cultural nuances of the country, right? Examples can be of highly subjective instances of someone facing a personal issue in their life, other life-threatening instances, or other social issues. This has two impacts. Number one, even if we assume that cultural preservation deplete the way opposition might presume it to, the fact that every person choosing this policy won't be a proponent of culture anyways in the status quo means that culture won't die out as a result of this policy. Impact number two, in a lot of cases, when people just want to replace a certain singular memory outside the mandate of culture, race, ethnicity, they might choose to replace all memories, which again means that the choice is still there. Also, a lot of racism and targeted microaggression you face is based on who you are perceived to be and your actions, such as going to mosque, the way you interact, what you learn. The way people are perceived, then again, depends on their memories, their language, and their behavior. Upon modification of this policy and receiving a new set of memories, these people will be indistinguishable to these natives and thus are likely to face less racism and less microaggression. And that is one preemptive clarification that I wanted to make under contextualization before I present and elucidate on what our arguments going to be. We're going to talk about three lines of argument on which both I and Ali are going to present process analysis on. Argument number one, how several of these migrants are likely to come from trauma-stricken backgrounds and disenfranchised social groups in oppressive regimes and are likely to be carrying certain elements of their culture that is imbued in them, the same memories that they might want to forget. Argument number two, how socio-cultural assimilation is better fashioned in our world. When this choice exists for the migrants, we're going to also then debate and show you practical benefits of this assimilation under a post-migration framework. But argument number three, which Ali is going to propound on, the individualist versus the collectivist debate and how the individual side wins. We're going to have four sub-arguments of it. Number one, we're going to target the faulty assumption that states that every member of the race, ethnicity, religion is supposed to be a representative of this race culture that they originally belong to. Number two, the assumption that every member is likely to be fair and just representative of their culture. Three, even if we preemptively understand, not everyone wants to be a representative post-migration, especially if they've had bad or traumatic memories associated with it. Point number four, we're talking in this debate the erasure of all memories. It includes the ethos of all issues, such as social issues and other memories, holistically. Ali will then talk about individual agency and the of bad experiences. First argument. It is imperative to understand how it's not the fault of a particular person to be born in, let's say, a homophobic culture, state regime. It is also not the fault of a woman who is born in a radically patriarchal society like Pakistan, India, Bangladesh. All of it is involuntary and of the domain of the person of choosing. As a result, a lot of times the set of memories curated or formed are not only dependent on your individual choosing, but this option does exist once they feel like they want to replace all memories and live life post-migration. The memories of the people are severely shackled under cultural dogmas that label them as culture traitors once they try to unshackle the chains of injustice that is inherently and internally geared towards a lifetime of distress. These cultured instances are propagated by landed gentry, an upper ruling class or aristocracy that have no incentive but to pursue their own interest and chained by the fact that they can't do anything but to look to the question of their own subsistence. They make basic human rights such as the right to liberty and self-determination that we think inheres in the human conditioning insanely difficult for these groups to acquire. Panel, a lot of times such stakeholders are entire states. So the question is, why should you own any loyalty to your culture, regime, state when culture has put you into the state so badly and has allowed you for this choice to even sprout forth? What panel need to understand is the following consequence. There is nothing as a race traitor or a culture traitor because this accentuates white nationalist utopian expectations of how you need to behave, how it's the best interest for you to suffer, how you should prove your royalty no matter what suffering that you are undergoing. It has a following impact, and this leaves no room for individual development. So it's a bad thing to say that all black people are responsible for protecting black communities and trusts, so they need to be accountable and be hyper aware all the time, or suffer alongside other black people, or constantly remember what slavery feels like when they have the option to protect themselves and move on. People who are proud of their culture are direct beneficiaries of that culture. Therefore, people who are poor, whose rights are infringed, are likely to opt for the policy. What if you're a child soldier, suffer of war crimes? Why shouldn't you get what is happening, or what is hampering your ability to fit in this different life? As a Dalit or a Shudra, if I'm forced to clean my steps and places when I walk, why would I ever want to raise my memories? It's literally not worth it that I don't pursue. I'm a product and target of patriarchy. Why should I be able to disassociate and forget my past as a vulnerable target in a post-migration framework? At the end of the day, the choice still remains. We know cultures aren't static. That's something that Ali is going to talk about as well. Second argument. These certain elements of culture aren't worth pursuing or preserving and choosing or for you to affiliate with anyone perfectly fine. Therefore, let's understand what is necessary to exist together as a society and grow in individual economy. A lot of times, the culture and barriers associated with this, such as language, religious beliefs, indoctrination, restrict your ability to integrate into a newly formed society. This affects the circle you choose, what kind of activities and socialization you do, and where you live and what kind of jobs you do. Right? This is a unique trade-off that the panel needs to consider though. One is that of identity and culture. This is worth it because culture is essentially arbitrary, and being in a different culture can be some different than being in your own culture. But the catch here is of adaptation. You to integrate in society and thus get more economic opportunities, able to earn more money, that allows you to escape poverty, have more choices in terms of jobs and lifestyles, and allows you to change your social status. What does the opposition needs to prove? They have to prove how culture is homogenous, and members have to follow a monoistic version of it, despite having lived traumatic experiences and the willingness to disassociate themselves from it, all while in simultaneous tandem. The second thing that they need to prove is what arbitrary measures are they using to prove how important a cultural affiliation is. The last thing that they need to prove is how do you know it is important to know how much one owns culture. Because we've given all of these instances, we're very proud to propose.